In the early 2000s, Jay-Z felt ready for world domination. So he wanted to make a global album. And by global, I mean album that is dominated by Afrobeat, reggae, and dancehall music. So he reached out to the king of dancehall, Vybz Kartel, and recorded 3 songs with Vybz Kartel before he went to jail. He reached out to Femi Kuti, son of the legend Fela Kuti, to help him put the album together. But to executive produce the album, he brought in the most internationally successful rapper he knew, Kanye West. And Kanye West took out Vybz Kartel and Femi Kuti's input from the album and put out the album that became known as Blueprint 3. But a year after Blueprint 3 came out, Kanye West became one of the first record executives in the US to sign a modern Afrobeat artist by name of D'banj. To date, if you go to Nigeria and the rest of Africa, Kanye West is credited as the person who put the spotlight on Afrobeat in the US and set Afrobeat up to do what it is doing now in the US. I think that story is given to Thomas Edison. Kanye West did not invent the light bulb. He actually got in the way of inventing the light bulb, but he gets credit for the light bulb, just like your man Thomas Edison. Welcome to Do or Da podcast. My name is Nenebi Tony. This is a cultural commentary podcast where I talk about tech, business, and media from the perspective of an African living in the US. So this week, the conversation is going to be about Jay-Z's attempt to make a global album and Kanye West's stealing of that vision and making it his own. But before we get into it, I like to always start with a personal story. And the personal story I want to start with is in the year 2010 and in the years 2010 and 2011, I listened to only 3 musicians the whole year. I listened to Jay-Z, Kanye West, and Kanan. Jay-Z and Kanye West, I just put out Watch the Throne, and I didn't feel the need to listen to anybody else. If I listened to somebody else, it was always somebody who was on a song with them. And later on, I branched out to listen to those people who did songs with Kanye West and Jay-Z and Kanan, right? But for the 2 years of my life, I listened to only Kanye West, Jay-Z, and Kanan. Kanye West because I felt he was the most creative musician or artist, period, to have ever existed. Jay-Z because I felt like he's the greatest writer in hip-hop and even the greatest writer, period. Kanan because his music feels like home to me. Kanan has a song called Fatima. It's about this girl he had a crush on when he was 9 who passed away. And I had a crush on the girl when I was 11 who passed away. So that song became a deep emotional connection point for me. And I became obsessed with the world of Kanan. He's from Somalia. I'm from Ghana. Somalia is a bit more rough than Ghana, but I could relate to the stories Kanan was telling. So emotion was Kanan. Intellectual was Jay-Z, and Kanye West was just crafting the emotion and intellect together. So I didn't feel the need to listen to anybody else. I just listened to these 3 people for 2 years straight. And my life is better for it. Anyway, so let's get into the story of Jay-Z trying to make a global album, the story of Kanye West coming in and how it led to what it led to. In the year 2006, Jay-Z was an ambassador for the United Nations. They had this program called Water for the World, Water for Life program. So at the time, there was a global crisis. There was a shortage of water in certain communities around the world. some of which were in the continent of Africa. So Jay-Z did a world tour with the UN to visit some communities in the continent of Africa. He donated $400,000 of his own money for this project. And so he dug wells in impoverished communities in Africa, and he also performed concerts in the continent. And I remember watching this Jay-Z interview, and he said it was an emotional roller coaster for him because in daytime he would be in these impoverished communities in Africa, seeing how hard life was. And nighttime he would be at this concert and see these people fly, looking beautiful, just vibing to his music. I remember this time I was a kid, yeah. But I remember that Jay-Z came to Ghana the day of his concert in Ghana, performed and left the same day. That is because Ghana wasn't part of the countries that were hit with the water crisis he was addressing. But the UN Secretary General at the time was your guy, Kofi Annan, who was a Ghanaian, right? So Jay-Z came to perform in Kofi Annan's country, even though it wasn't part of his itinerary, and then went on to his activities. So Jay-Z said these activities he partook in the continent of Africa really impacted him and stayed with him for life. So from 2006, he was looking for ways to honor the emotions he had gathered in the continent of Africa. He even, and let me say this, you don't know this if you don't live in Africa, but the biggest music genre in the continent of Africa is reggae. Every country you go in the continent of Africa, reggae music is just big. Jamaican music rules the continent of Africa. And there is stats to back this. Richard Branson had a record label called Virgin Records in the UK, and he signed a lot of Jamaican artists. But Jamaica is a very small island, right? So usually when you're signing an artist from a certain country, you want to be able to sell huge record in that country. I think Jamaican population is like 2 million or something like that. It's less than 10 million. So Richard Branson said he signed these Jamaican artists because they were big in Africa and he wanted to move records in Africa. So he was signing Jamaican artists to, what was the name? To sell in Africa. And Richard Branson loved his time making money in Africa so much so that he started an airline business in Nigeria called Virgin Nigeria. Go check it out. But my point is, reggae music is so huge in Africa. So when Jay-Z was performing or touring Africa, he discovered that. And Jay-Z himself said he tried to get more into reggae music. So he reached out to Mr. C, right? Mr. C is a DJ from Hot 97 in New York. But I think Mr. C, I didn't Google this, but I think Mr. C is from the continent of Africa. I don't know which country in particular. I forgot to Google this, and my internet is down. But Jay-Z calls him, is it the Angry African or the African something? Jay-Z calls him African something. He has a nickname for Mr. C. And so he reached out to Mr. C to help him get access to more reggae music. And according to Jay-Z, Mr. C didn't do it. But Jay-Z himself started getting more and more into reggae music at this point. He tried to actually sign Damian Marley. He took meetings with Damian Marley, the son of Bob Marley. And the Marley estate sent Jay-Z a letter to desist from signing Damian Marley. And I think he also tried to sign Vybz Kartel, and that also didn't work out. So Jay-Z was really, really big into Jamaican culture at this point and its connection to the continent of Africa. And I'll point it out that around this time, the first black president came into office, your man Barack Obama, in 2008, and Jay-Z played a small role in the election of Barack Obama. And Barack Obama is also from the continent of Africa, so I think that also increased Jay-Z's love for the continent. So much so that in 2009, a year after, the same year Obama became president, Jay-Z put out a musical on Broadway called Fela. It is based on the life of Fela Kuti, right? Fela Kuti is a Nigerian music legend who created the sound of Afrobeat. And Jay-Z said that what fascinated him about Fela Kuti was the fact that Fela Kuti was inspired by American jazz music, specifically James Brown. And Fela Kuti took the sound of James Brown and made it into his own. So Fela Kuti didn't just imitate James Brown, he created his own sound. And so the interconnectivity between African Americans and the Africa diaspora and the continent of Africa was something that was highlighted in the story of Fela Kuti, especially because Fela Kuti also lived in the US for some time. So when Jay-Z put out the musical Fela, it was a huge success. But I'll say this, the musical Fela that Jay-Z produced with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith on Broadway in 2009 was the first time in over 30 years that an African icon was portrayed in Broadway. Actually, it is the second time in the history of Broadway that an African icon was portrayed on Broadway. The first African icon to be portrayed on Broadway was a 13-year-old girl from South Africa who inspired the movie Sarafina. But Sarafina, before it became a movie in 1992, was on Broadway in 1988. So let me paint a picture for you. South Africa was under apartheid government. Apartheid is a very gruesome racist regime where it wasn't just that black people and white people were separated, but white people were dominating black South Africans to the extent that they were trying to strip black South African of their entire identity. They didn't just put Nelson Mandela in prison, they were trying to put the entire black race in Africa in mental shackles. How did they do this? In 1986, 1974, the apartheid government in South Africa planned and went on taking steps to make Afrikaans the language of white South African, the official language of South Africa. At this point, English language was already the official language of South Africa. And the apartheid government thought English is universal, is not white South African enough. So we are going to make Afrikaans the official language of South Africa. And this caused students who were going to be required to study Afrikaans in South Africa to protest. And this protest was known as the Soweto Uprising. And this protest happened in 1976. It was supposed to be a peaceful protest, but it became violent when the police turned guns on school kids. So a 13-year-old girl was gunned down fatally by the police in South Africa. And this image became the image of apartheid. It was portrayed around the world, newspapers, magazines, TV stations, carried it around the world, and everybody saw the evil that apartheid was. So this led to the conversation around the Soweto Uprising to become global. And it inspired a playwright called Mbongeni Ngama, a South African playwright. And she partnered with a South African musician, Hugh Masekela, to do a musical inspired by this event known as Sarafina. And the musical was so successful in South Africa, it went international. So it was showed on Broadway in 1988. There were 597 performances of Sarafina on Broadway in New York. And it got 5 Tony nominations. So the success of the musical on Broadway led to the movie Sarafina, which starred the forever icon, God in human flesh, what's his name? Oh my boy, why did I forget this woman's name? Oh my God. I'm literally about to cry because I can't remember her name. She's on The View. Oh my God. When I know something, I can't remember it, but I get teary. I don't know why that happens to me. She didn't cry. What's her name? What's her name? It's not Oprah Winfrey. It's the other queen. Freedom is coming tomorrow. Whoopi Goldberg. Yes. So the movie starred Whoopi Goldberg as the teacher for the kids who were during the uprising, and the wife of Hugh Masekela, Maria Makiba, was the parent for the main character, Sarafina. So when Sarafina came out, it was successful around the world. And I want to believe that Sarafina was one of the reasons that apartheid ended. Because Sarafina came out in 91, 92, and in 93, the new South African Constitution was written. And there was a provision in the new South African Constitution that all the 11 languages of South Africa are going to be the official language of South Africa. So that 13-year-old girl sacrificed, life was sacrificed, she didn't sacrifice it. Her life was sacrificed, and it led to the success of the uprising. Nelson Mandela came out of jail and became President Nelson Mandela. So Fela is the second movie after Sarafina about an African icon to be featured on Broadway. And it was also successful. So this was in 2009. And Jay-Z is a businessman. So whenever he does something, even if it's inspired and it's successful, of course he's going to do more. So he decided to do his world music album. Now we call it global music album, but back in the day, they used to call it world music album. So his world music album, and that album was supposed to have sounds of reggae, dancehall, and some African music, right? So this was ongoing, going on, the conversations, the songs, some songs were made. According to Jay-Z, he had this concept of what he wanted the music to sound like, and he was traveling around the world collecting sounds. And then he went to Manchester and met with Kanye West, now known as Ye. And Ye played him some beat. And Jay-Z loved the beat Ye played him so much so that he decided that, you know what, I'm going to stick to the concept of making music for the world, but I think I would be a little bit more close to the sound of hip-hop. So that happened. I don't know what Ye said to convince Jay-Z, but I think what Ye said is the fact that at this point, Ye had put out his, what's his name, 808 and Heartbreak album. It was heavy on auto-tune, and Jay-Z didn't like the fact that Ye was using auto-tune, and auto-tune was taking over hip-hop. So Ye convinced Jay-Z that do a song about how auto-tune is destroying hip-hop. So Jay-Z did D of auto-tune, and it was a success. So Jay-Z kept going back to the sound that Kanye was drafting. And so that changed the sound of Jay-Z. However, the sensibility of doing a global album stayed with Jay-Z. So if you listen to first let's start with the cover. The cover for Blueprint 3 have musical instruments because Jay-Z wasn't trying to do a rap album, he was trying to do a musical album. And two, the samples are a testament to what Jay-Z was trying to portray on the album, right? So, for example, he had samples of songs from Brazil, France, Germany, Greece, but he had like 3 or 4 songs that were samples of Jamaican artists. For example, onto the next one, he sampled Ahu Say Me Adan by Cathy Ranks, a dancehall artist. On Already Home, he sampled Mad Mad Ivy by Gladys All Star, another a reggae band. So Jay-Z stuck to the global sound with his album, right? And even lyrically, he tried to do that. So the first song on the album is the song What We're Talking About, which features an Australian band, Empire of the Sun, right? Luke Still is the lead singer of the band. And everybody who knows that song know the song for the lyrics. I don't run rap no more, I run the map. So Jay-Z was trying to tell us that he was moving from just rap to world dominance, right? I don't run rap no more, I run the map. But there are other lyrics on this song that tells us the vision Jay-Z was trying to reach or get on this album, right? For example, there was a line where he said, the last line he rapped on the introduction song was, he said, Rasclat when rude boy come through with the roof off, right? Rasclat is a patois word. Rude boy is English, but it's something Jamaican say, right? So he was letting you know the Jamaican influence he was going for by using Jamaican Rasclat when the rude boy come through with the roof off. He portrayed that heavily on the opening of the album, and then he went on to open the sound up to not just Jamaican and African sound, but global sound, right? But even there's interesting interview I watched of Jay-Z from 2010, where I get a lot of this information I'm sharing with you from, and then piece out together other information from other places, right? But in that interview, when Jay-Z was talking about the fact that, fun fact, Empire State of Mind is the biggest Jay-Z song of all time. And because of the lyrics in New York, everybody thinks that that song is supposed to be the anthem for New York, or is a song about New York. But in 2010, Jay-Z said the song Empire State of Mind is not about New York. It is about the emotion of moving from a place and moving to a completely new place and becoming somebody over there. That is the theme of the song Empire State of Mind. And he said it's New York because New York is where he's from. Actually, the song was written in Europe, not in New York. So the song in New York, the Empire State of Mind song, it is Jay-Z's anthem about being somebody wherever in the world you are from, even though the chorus says New York. And the second verse of that song has a lot of double entendres that portrays the mentality Jay-Z was trying to portray on that song, right? So on the first line on the second verse, Jay-Z name checks his Latino friend OG, right? And from there on, there was the line, welcome to the melting pot, which the following line let us know that it is about selling crack, but also we all know what melting pot is in geography. So that's what Jay-Z said he was going for. And then he went on to portray some of the stereotypes associated with being an immigrant in America. So when he referenced yellow cab, dollar cab, blah, 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 he followed up with, for foreigners, he ain't fair. Letting you know that immigrants come to the US and do minor job, and then he added, it's a pity half of you won't make it. So Jay-Z was portraying a certain mindset, not just for New York, but also for people from around the world and moving around the world. And Jay-Z said he did this because he was trying to reach out to the entire world with our album and go around the world with our album, right? And it's funny that the song where he owns himself and where he's from, New York, is the song that ended up becoming the biggest song from the album. And he said that is testament to the fact that the mentality he was trying to portray on that song is the mentality that people got from the song. Because wherever you are in the world, I used to live in Ghana, the song Empire State of Mind was huge. And it's funny that even on that song, yeah, he said, rest in peace, Bob Marley. Bob Marley is not from New York. But he name dropped Bob Marley as a homage to the Jamaican sound he was trying to go for on the album. Boom. And the album ended with the song Forever Young. Forever Young is a fun song because when that song came out, the first time I heard that song, I said, wow, this is one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. And then I went and read a Billboard magazine review of the song, and Billboard said, this is the worst song Jay-Z has ever made in his life. And I'm like, do I have bad taste or Billboard has bad taste? Guess what? By 2010 or 2011, the song Forever Young was so big in Ghana that every Ghanaian guy over the age of 30 today had that song as their ringtone. Forever Young. It was always funny to me how I felt like I was wrong for a second because Billboard said I was wrong, and then everything that happened after proved that I was a smart kid. And I remember this because it was one of those experiences that made me personally realize that my instincts can be right and my instincts is right. So whenever I have to make a decision and I have to choose between believing myself and somebody else, I don't care who you are, I am right, especially if it concerns my life. If it concerns other things and other people, I listen to other people. But when it concerns my life, I'll take everything anybody tells me under advisement because I have the Holy Spirit of God living in me. And so I can think like God, and I think like God. And yeah, so the album came out in 2010. Kanye now became the person interested in global domination. He met a Nigerian Afrobeat artist, The Bunch, on a plane flight. The Bunch played him some songs. Kanye heard it, and Kanye immediately signed The Bunch, and they put out a song which took over the world in 2012 called Oliver Twist. And then Kanye went on to do some songs with K-pop artists. That is why to date, no matter what is happening in the world, Chicago and Korea, South Korea are two places Kanye West is goated. Chicago people don't play about Kanye because he's from there. I've met Chicago people. Korea people don't play about Kanye. I've seen people attack a lot of like K-pop stars online that why are they still supporting Kanye, bro? He put their country on. Because he got the idea from Jay-Z. So Jay-Z is known to be a ruthless businessman, doing things that benefit him to the detriment of other people. But in this particular instance, Jay-Z wasn't the ruthless one. It was Kanye rather who was ruthless enough to steal Jay-Z's idea, and then he ran with it. And Kanye till date is considered one of the biggest rappers in the world. I think Kanye have dwarfed Jay-Z in a lot of instances because he took Jay-Z's idea and ran with it. That is the end of my story about Jay-Z, Kanye, and the sound of Afrobeat being transported to the continent of Africa. But before I leave, I want to end by talking about the American who went and took over the Italian job. They are stealing our jobs. An American went and stole an Italian job. I'm talking about Virgin Mary and Mafioso. I'm talking about somebody who is possibly both holy and hood. I'm talking about Pope Leo the 14th, right? And before we talk about Pope Leo the 14th, let me say this. Pope Leo the 13th was photographed in 1890, and he's on record as being the first pope to be on video. This happened in 1819. And Will Chamberlain scored 100 points in one basketball game in the 1950s, I think, and we don't have any video record of it, bro. Anyway, so back to what's the name? Pope Leo, right? Pope Leo is from Chicago, which means that he's probably hood. Now, let me reserve this conversation for another day. Let me say this. I think that the cardinals electing Pope Leo as the Pope is a very Solomonic decision on their part. A decision that portrayed a lot of wisdom of Solomon. And if you're not familiar with the story of Solomon, in the Bible, King Solomon prayed to God for wisdom, and God gave him wisdom. And the thing about God giving you a gift is he presents you with an opportunity to use that gift. So the day after God gave Solomon the, what's the name? The wisdom, two women came to Solomon because one of them, baby, became unalive over the night and then went and stole the other woman's baby. And so when the issue came to Solomon, both of the women were claiming ownership of the baby who stayed alive. And so Solomon said, you know what we are going to do? We are going to cut the baby who is alive into two and give half to each woman. And one of the women said, yes, let's do that. And the other woman said, no, just give the baby to her, the other woman, is she claims as a baby. And Solomon said, the woman who wanted the baby to stay alive is the real mother of the baby, right? And so they were able to split the baby. They didn't split the baby. They gave the baby to the alive, to the real mother. And this applies to Pope Leo in the sense that when Pope Francis was alive, Pope Francis is known to be this progressive pope. Pope Francis is not that progressive, but the church in the US is a little bit more conservative than the church in the rest of the world. Americans are very conservative about being American. The weird thing about America is Americans are overboard with everything. Americans who are progressive are extremely progressive. Americans who are conservative are extremely conservative. So Pope Francis' slightly progressive views was too progressive for the conservatives in America. So he had a lot of issue with the church in America and the rest of traditionalists in the Catholic Church, right? And so Pope Leo electing Pope Leo does something. It calms the church in America down because he's one of them, but also Pope Leo is from the school of Pope Francis, so he has some progressive sensibilities, right? So the cardinals were able to satisfy both sides with the election of Pope Leo. And I think this is very smart on their back. And I'm a Christian, so I believe that God and the Holy Spirit led them to do that. And I'm grateful that we can literally see the working of the Holy Spirit in these days. I know, after talking about Jay-Z and Kanye, I'm talking about God and the Holy Spirit. I'm everything. I'm not one thing. I'm everything. I listen to rap music and Christian music. I go to church and the club. All right. Have a good week. Till we talk again, always remember your thoughts matter, just not to me.